Bobby, what's going on, man? I got to get that music in your headset somehow, brother.
I could hear it, but a little too faintly, baby. I see you dancing
I'm
along.
I'm rocking out over here, hype, jazzed
Yeah.
up to do a new podcast. What's going on, everybody? This is the Ombudsman Report podcast, the OR as we like to
Yes,
call it.
indeed.
I'm joined with my host. My name's Matthew Sperry. I should probably say that on the out front. And joined with me is my host Bobby Juliana. What's going on?
Matt, I'm doing great. Happy Monday to you. How was work today? Did you go well?
Yeah, work went well, Trying along. We're getting some things done, but, I'm always happy to talk news, politics, culture with my buddy
Yes,
over
indeed.
here. So we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. I mean, I don't know how long we're going to go here, but
Yeah, it was a packed week last week. A little
certainly
late 'cause of Mother's
jam-packed.
Day, I guess, but
yeah, we'll say it was Mother's Day. That's all. I hope you all had a great Mother's Day. And if this is your first time listening, maybe you clicked a link on Twitter, maybe you found us on YouTube. We hope you're watching on YouTube. We do this podcast every week. We talk about the news, the politics, the culture for the week. You can follow us along. You can follow me on Twitter at Planet Politico. You can follow Bobby over at Bobby J Politics. You can find us on iTunes, on Google Play, like I mentioned, our website and YouTube. So
all over.
all over. Let's get after it. All right. I think I want to start the show off with a piece that came out earlier last week, right as our podcast sort of launched last week. So we missed it.
Right.
And this is by Barry Weiss. And whenever Barry Weiss's name is mentioned on social media, she just blows the whole thing up. She's pretty good at that social media game, I guess. And
Yeah, for being fairly in line with all the liberal politics, she can cause quite a stir.
she causes more than a stir, especially with this new piece that she dropped. It's titled "The Renegades of the Intellectual Dark Web." And the reactions to this piece is more what I wanted to talk about. So
Sure.
essentially, if you're unaware, the intellectual dark web is a term coined by, I believe, Eric Weinstein.
Yeah, I'm pretty jokingly, but
Jokingly, right? I
it's
mean,
kind of catching on.
I've seen some names. I wish they would call it like the Re-Enlightenment. I like that one a lot more.
That's
I think
pretty
that's
good.
right, because essentially the intellectual dark web is people
It
who
paints a good picture, though.
right. It's people from all over the political spectrum who reject identity politics at its base level. They reject the idea that an immutable characteristic, whether it be your gender, your race, what you identify as, right, whatever, that says what your politics should be, right? And the people that are in this intellectual dark web reject that idea, and they believe people are more nuanced. They believe that people are complex and can have a whole range of ideas that don't necessarily line up with the hierarchy of oppression that we've been
Right.
seen peddled along on some of
Extremely
the
interested in free speech, just very much interested in having conversations and debates. Hashing out the everyday political issue, but like much deeper topics as well.
and these people that are in the intellectual dark web. We're going to go through them as well and just talk a little bit about them and probably why they're included in this list. You have people like Sam Harris and Ben Shapiro. You have an Orthodox Jew and a staunch liberal atheist,
Sure.
but they're cordial, they're friendly, they'll share a stage, no one gets angry at each other, they're willing to have the tough conversations, and at the end, agree to disagree, let's go grab a drink, it's not a big deal.
Right.
And I think that's what's so attractive about the movement is that, politics to a lot of people is a sport, and you got to
A
defeat
blood
the other
sport,
side.
too.
It's a blood sport. And what's attractive, at least what's attractive to me, is we can have these disagreements, but I don't hate you as a person. I don't think any less of you. I don't think you're an idiot because you
Right.
believe a certain thing, right? Some people believe some pretty stupid things, and my
Sure,
Twitter
sure.
mentions today are evidently are proof of that. We'll talk about that garbage in my Twitter mentions later. But yeah, I think we should just start, going through who some of these people are. So, Ben Shapiro, for example, is one conservative. Bob, you're a pretty big fan of his, like his podcast.
I listen to his podcast fairly regularly. If you read the piece, I think Barry Weiss actually did a very good job. I thought she was particularly fair. She characterized it well. Like we said, these are guys just men and women just trying to have a conversation, really. And they really have come about because they've been forced from the mainstream. any of these news and the major publications, well, they already have their certain format. Like obviously Fox News, any type of news program, you have the host. He brings on someone on the left, someone on the right. They have the split screen, and you both have 2 minutes to make a nice soundbite. And you can't have long form discussion, and you can't really tease out the differences in your ideas in that type of format.
Yeah, it's impossible.
It's impossible. It's a really bad format. I mean, and so a lot of these people, are obviously deep thinkers. They come from all different areas, academia. Majin Nawaz was a former extremist turned anti-radical. And so they've all found a space on the internet where they can have these long discussions and really work out ideas and put out longer form interviews and thoughts. And people have really picked up on that, and they've built for themselves a large following, a very, financially successful. Certainly some of them, like the Joe Rogan podcast, the Rubin Report.
Oh yeah.
Sam Harris's podcast gets about 1 million views, a million listens per episode. They're not as frequent. The Dan Shapiro show I saw got 20 million downloads a month.
Yeah, he's the largest conservative podcast in the nation.
Right. So they're building massive platforms, and it's really possible because they've been ignored by the mainstream, and they've also been shunned by the mainstream, no matter whether their politics are really left and right.
In different ways, for sure.
In different ways, for sure. So in the piece, she listed this website that actually lists. It's an unofficial website, like in typical intellectual dark web fashion. No one really knows who made the website or who owns the website, but it lists some of the names. So I guess we should maybe read some of them off.
Yeah, I think Majin Nawaz is a perfect example.
Yeah, talk about him
of this. So if you're unaware, Majin Nawaz, I sort of was introduced to him through listening to Sam Harris, because Sam Harris does a lot of speaking on religious fundamentalism, and in our day and age that has spread towards more questions about fundamental Islam and extremism. And, Sam and, Ayan Hirsi Ali, who was also on this intellectual dark web, was at one of those Intelligence Squared debates with Majin Nawaz, who was defending that the Quran is a peaceful book, or something like that. And Ayan was arguing against the motion, right? She's a Somali refugee, forced genital mutilation, fled a forced marriage. So she's no one to mess with. She's a tough cookie, actually. She's great. And after the event, Sam Harris went up to Majin Nawaz and they started having a conversation, and he was like, "Come on, Majid, you don't actually believe these things, right? Like, you don't actually believe the Quran is this, word or whatever it is, right?" And so they had to start to have a conversation. He invited him on his podcast. And what you find out about Majid is he was a former Islamist terrorist who was locked in an Egyptian prison for 5 years or what have you.
Right, when the Muslim Brotherhood came to power.
And since then, he's sort of changed his views. He's reformed. Now he's on the LBC, the London Broadcasting Channel, I guess it is, the public radio for London in the UK, where he is a liberal Muslim reformer, and he tries to have these conversations to bring people onto the side of tolerance. So he's one of these examples and he's willing to have the conversation.
Yeah.
He's one of these guys who doesn't play into the identity politics nonsense. He's speaking from experience. He's not going to let people get away with the victim hierarchy. And so he's just a great intellectual guy. And I highly suggest anyone read his book, Radical. He was just talking about how it's translated into like 50 different languages or something. Yeah. But there's a whole slew of this list.
The list really continued to grow, but I think it's interesting how, at least for myself, I find it interesting in reading her piece how the way she characterized how you sort of fall into it was sort of my own experience. So I listened, I listened to some podcasts. I remember, I listened to a little bit of Mark Levin, and then I came across Dan Shapiro's podcast because that was sort of my political leanings. But then, for more leisure, I listened to the Joe Rogan Experience. Because I like the UFC, and he's got fighters on there, he's got comedians, but he also has these thinkers on there, and his show has sort of become a platform for all of them to come on and have an episode, and it's sort of like an introduction. So through him I found Steven Pinker, Douglas Murray, Gad Saad, Jordan Peterson, the Weinstein brothers, Heather Hang, I don't remember which one's wife.
I think that's Brett's wife.
Brett's wife, and then Sam Harris has his own shows, and now these people are sort of frequenting all of them, and it's creating really a network of people, and like you said, I guess the most interesting part was the blowback to the article. So the article was basically just saying that these people are out there. They're breaking the norms of what the mainstream media is doing. They're having discussions that no one else is really having. And not only are they extremely popular, but now they're financially successful. They're self-sustaining on their own platforms. And they really, whereas a while back they would have needed the attention of the mainstream, they're benefiting from not being associated with them.
Right.
Because lot of them, people don't approach it with a bias that you get with CNN, New York Times, Fox News.
Correct, and I think a lot of them walked into this intellectual dark web by happenstance.
Right.
This wasn't a, what would you call it, a concerted effort to make, okay, guys, let's all get over here and let's make the intellectual dark web.
Exactly.
No, that's not what happened. You have Dave Rubin, who left the Young Turks, felt that he wasn't really, as he likes to characterize it, he didn't leave the left left him. Mm-hmm. Right? Joe Rogan.
And then some of these names we've listed, Ben Shapiro, pretty far right. He's very conservative, very strict, Orthodox Jew, like you said. Sam Harris, liberal atheist. The Weinstein brothers, they was it
deeply progressive. Eric.
Was it Brett? Yeah, Brett was a.
Eric
Brett,
is. Oh, I'm sorry, Brett. You're right.
Brett
you're
was
right.
a professor at Evergreen College, which is a very liberal college. They come from all sides of the spectrum, but the one thing really linking them is just this willingness to have a conversation and not to just demonize the other side before hearing and debating their ideas. They're willing to engage based on what they believe and listen to what you say, and then and then counter it.
Yeah.
And the discussions that they have are fascinating, and they learn more about their positions. They're willing to shift and change, and they're also willing to put their foot down and not bend and break. So, the cast of people here is really fascinating.
Right. So, going off of being forced from the mainstream, again, Sam Harris is, New York Times bestselling author. When he goes to the mainstream, he goes on Fareed Zakaria's show and starts talking about his ideas. Very much, I like Fareed Zakaria. I think he's a little bit more fair than a lot of the CNN hosts. But he gets kind of shunned away, and then he goes on Bill Maher's show, and they start to talk about the same thing, and Ben Affleck calls him a racist, mm-hmm. right? And so he's like, oh, no, I'm not. And then more recently, you have Vox essentially coming out and saying Sam Harris is a racist. And
right.
So I understand, because people like Glenn Greenwald, who is not a fan of Harris by any stretch of the imagination, some of them come out here and say, what are you guys talking about? You guys are being shut down. You guys have these huge platforms. And it's like, okay, Glenn, you never have to go to a college campus for a talk and bring 600 armed guards.
Exactly. Which happened to Ben Shapiro.
You don't have to go give a talk at NYU and some professor brings a Garrett, like in Jordan Peterson's case, mm-hmm. right? You don't go to a talk and the professor that you're supposed to be debating with gets punched on the way out of the event, aka Charles Murray.
Right.
This is over and over again. To speak out against Islam is putting a target on your back that people will follow through. Like that is a dangerous job, and the people criticizing them for speaking out. Don't get me wrong.
I don't know if it was criticizing. I think it was more mocking.
It's more. I don't know about that, because listen, Katie Hopkins. From the UK. Are you mm-hmm. aware of her?
Yeah.
She's blonde. She's a little too far, right? She's posting pictures of in Brussels and with a couple girls in the headscarf and saying, I'm a foreigner in my own land.
Right. I saw that.
That's a little too far. All right, Katie Hopkins, settle the fuck down. Sam Harris is just talking about, pupils. And, by talking about these pupils, there's the security is a huge burden on your life.
Right.
They'll come and end you. Look at what's his name, who wrote I can't remember his name. He had the Ayatollah put the thing on him.
Salman
Rushdie.
Salman Rushdie.
So look at Salman Rushdie, right? You make a book and all of a sudden they ruin your fucking life and you have to go into hiding for 20 years. So it's not the same, right? It's one thing to challenge ideas, which everyone is totally one to do. Because this is the thing. If it was just challenging ideas, these guys challenge each other's ideas.
Right.
They're, some are progressive, some are liberal, some are conservative, some are Trump. They're having their own talk about the politics, not assuming the worst of the other person and characterizing them as evil. Right. That's where I
think another thing that characterizes everyone here is that no matter what your political spectrum, they're each engaging in ideas that their respective tribes would find, taboo. I mean, Sam Harris on the left obviously has things to say about, the Muslim faith, whereas Ben Shapiro on the right, whether he's Trump or, with social justice warriors, he's getting, just as much flack. And they're getting run out of these areas. And you see journalists like a lot, like you said, Glenn Greenwald and, Blue Check Twitter was out in force, like mocking them, saying, oh, you guys have these huge platforms that you're bragging about. You're not actually shut down from free speech. And it's like you said with Ben Shapiro, he had to have 600 additional police officers guard his talk at UC Berkeley.
He's a 5'7" Jew.
Yeah.
Come on.
So they're wrong because, while they may have built these platforms,
it was out of the necessity to build this platform. It's not let's get a bunch of money and con all these people into following our platforms. It was, is anyone going to have a conversation where the other guy just isn't a racist?
These ideas? It was like what I saw in an interview. Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro were talking, and they're like, "I really hope we're not like the intellectuals of the age." You know what I mean? They're like, I mean, you're not that smart, but they're like, no one's having these ideas and these discussions, so someone has to talk about it. And like this band of people, across the political spectrum and across a myriad of ideas and different topics are having the discussion. And it's really interesting to follow. I mean, I listen to a lot of these people fairly regularly, and they're just providing. I mean, just from a business aspect and like a why they're gaining traction, they're providing something. We love to talk about the free market. They're putting something out there that is not getting hit upon anywhere, and there's a serious hunger for.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan took a bunch of flack for having some of the people on. He's had on InfoWars. Totally blanking on
Alex
Jones. He's had on Alex Jones. He's had on a couple crazy people, and he's like, "Look, I'm not an interviewer. I'm not a journalist. I'm a guy having a discussion, and I record it. So you make of it what you will." And people are very hungry for that open and honest and long form discussion. So
right, because you get guilt by association now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's Joe Rogan can't talk to him because he talked to Alex Jones, and Alex Jones is a crazy person, sure, but.
No, but people aren't buying that anymore. Is the thing?
They draw the line. Yeah, well, I think
because the way they're painting these people, if you actually know them, the smears on them are proving their point every day.
That is what is so infuriating to me, right? Because sometimes I feel like when I'm on Twitter defending some of these guys, I'm like, why am I even doing this? Right. I just feel like I'm not a fanboy. I don't look up. I mean, I have very few heroes who I would just hold on to. Right? I don't think you should cheerlead for anybody.
Right.
But it's the way that they're mischaracterizing their views, almost.
Right. No, completely.
Because it's
with
not
total disregard.
With total disregard.
It's so lazy and untrue.
Because I'll see things that Harris is. They'll be like, "Well, Harris wants to nuke the Muslim world." And I'm like, "So you haven't even read a book of his, or you haven't even listened to one podcast."
Right.
So if you're going to criticize someone, just get the facts right. I mean, you're just making up what they say.
Right, like NBC. Like Jordan Peterson sat down for an hour-long interview. He said it was over an hour during his interview with an NBC reporter. Then they characterized him as a darling of the alt-right, and they didn't really use any of the clips from the hour-long interview. And he just slammed him on his Twitter. He's just like, this is so blatantly untrue. It's just – the media is fueling these sites because for every time that you see these hit pieces come out – I mean, if you even sort of understand who they're putting the hit piece on, you realize how incorrect it is, and then it's like, why would I ever trust anything they have to say? And it pushes people away.
It really is. It's like Ben Shapiro is an alt-right, Jordan Peterson's alt-right. When if you listen to the people on the alt-right, they hate Jordan Peterson and they hate Ben Shapiro because they're too much like classical liberals. They're too much into the stuff that we talk about individualism, you know, and
I
free
mean, what does Ben
will
Shapiro say all the time? He was the #1 target of anti-Semitic hate on Twitter in 2016. Like,
right, yeah.
but then people call Ben Shapiro a Nazi, and it's like, dude, I'm an Orthodox Jew. Like, what are you saying here?
I know.
It's just
Well,
the characterizations are just so.
there
I
are
mean,
no
it's
good
interesting to see what's going to
insults.
happen, dude. The media is really ripping themselves apart.
There is no good insults anymore. They've been watered down so much. I mean, you're calling Ben Shapiro a Nazi. What do you call the guys in Charlottesville?
Right.
You're telling me they're the same thing? They're not the same thing.
Well,
Okay.
that's the problem. I mean,
And
I think we had this discussion a couple of podcasts ago, you and me, talking about how there used to just be ABC, NBC, and CBS, right? And then CNN came along, and then Fox News came along, and the acceptable discourse and the framed narrative has totally shifted. You can get opinions on anything you want. You can get in your own bubble, and
oh,
I
well,
mean
that's
because
true.
of that, yeah, obviously, but because of that, they're not able to control the discourse anymore. Like whereas in the old days, you could just paint someone as this, and if all the news agencies went in lockstep with it, they were that, and it's falling apart now.
Yeah, I mean, this just interests me because I feel like we're really at the beginning of
Oh, 100%.
of what's going on. I really do. I mean, I think more and more people are realizing that the jig is up, and when you actually go and do the homework, a lot of these people are lying to you. They're making things up. Go ahead.
So I agree with you there, but here's a question. So more and more people are realizing the jig is up. How many more people are either tuning out entirely or have never paid attention to begin with?
Well, I don't know. In our experience, some of our friends are sort of just starting to get on this train.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we've had friends who considered themselves at least into politics on like the very periphery, right? Like they would call themselves Republicans or Democrats, but they had no idea what
Right. It's what their
Republican or
parents are.
Democrats
They get engaged like 2 months before an election.
Right. But now with these, with the podcasts and the internet and stuff, our friends who were not really into politics now, they'll text me and be like, "Yo, did you see this?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Dude, I did see that Jordan Peterson interview. Like, thanks for sharing that. That's pretty cool. You're finally getting engaged." So who knows? I mean, maybe some people aren't necessarily getting their minds changed. Maybe more people are just starting to like catch on and just be like,
Right.
"Okay, I should probably start paying attention to this. It seems a little important."
Right. Well, I think they're just catching on, one, to the importance, and two, to that the narrative that is out there. It's all about the narrative. It's not even the news that is out there. The narrative that is out there is wrong. It's not truthful, and more people are waking up to that in part because of the intellectual dark web.
Sure. I mean, let's end it there. I mean, waking up to the intellectual dark web. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
So
Nothing more to say.
it is Monday, and today, if
Indeed.
you've been following the news, we officially moved our embassy to the capital of Israel, Jerusalem.
Alrighty.
Me and you probably have some different takes on this, maybe a little bit of the same, but just the facts. Officially moved the embassy. Jared was there because he's head of Middle. Jared is a head of Middle East peace, and it's going swimmingly, as you can tell. As over 50 people were killed and 200 were injured in the Gaza Strip during protests, and this got me in some trouble, I would say. So my take on Israel, right? My take on Israel-Palestine. Wow, I mean, if a hot take ever started with something, it would start with that.
Right.
Right. Don't listen to anything I'm about to say.
Let me boil down, 50 years of history into one simple sentence. But go ahead, give it your best shot.
Yeah, it's that the Israel has a right to exist. The Jewish people, it's 2018. Okay, Israel is here. I don't know what you want me to say. The Jews deserve to have their homeland. Totally on board. What I'm not on board with is the dehumanization of some of these Palestinians. And I, have been getting slightly woke. Are we allowed to use that term here on this podcast?
I don't like it, but I'll let it go. Go ahead.
I used to be more staunch Israel supporter. When I was in school, I had a couple friends, one of whom that I'm figuring out, one of them was a pretty high Israeli business person. His daughter, she was very staunchly pro-Israel. She got me reading all that stuff. But, I went on today and I said, whoa, like there are 50 people killed. I mean, you're talking about people being sniped on top of buildings, near a fence. 200 people are injured. Are these all terrorists?
2,000.
2,000. I'm sorry, I said 200. Are these all terrorists? I was like, they can't be all terrorists. You have to think about the living conditions of people living in the Gaza Strip is not, the best. And that's also partly due to the government, Hamas, who exploits the Palestinian people, uses them as human shields, uses their sadness and their grief to get, win over support in the Western media.
Right.
I'm completely on board with that, but I Cassie Dillon, lone conservative, I'll just put her name out here on the podcast. I don't really care. She's more popular than me. Anyway, she'll never hear it. She put something out that Israel has a right to protect their borders. Terrorists are at the fence. Israelis are a mile away. Like, IDF can kill all the terrorists they need to. And all I did was link an article and said, hey, here's a report of a mentally ill woman being sniped for holding a sign. And immediately, my mentions filled with, how stupid could you possibly be? That's, the IDF would never, they're always justified in all trigger pullings, and every Palestinian is a terrorist. They're trying to break into Israel and stab as many Israelis as possible. I was like, whoa. That's not true. I'm totally willing to admit that Hamas uses Palestinians for their goal. I'm not willing to admit that every Palestinian is a terrorist that is hell-bent on killing as many Jews as possible.
Well, you're not allowed to have any nuance, Matt. You're not allowed to not pick a full-on entrenched side.
Which is my problem because, people are complex. People are strange.
I mean, issues are complex.
And people, because someone actually asked me, they was like, is it even possible to suggest that Hamas just pays these protesters to protest against Israel? Maybe. I mean, I've
seen evidence of that.
They've certainly been paid terrorist families. Sure, I'm willing to consider that. But are you willing to consider that someone would protest Israel without being a terrorist, without needing Hamas's support? Do you think that the conditions in Gaza are so good that the only reason you would ever protest living in Gaza is if you're paid by terrorists? What are you talking about, man? They're living in open sewage over there. It is not a great place to live.
Right, but I don't think all that blame falls on Israel. But again, I understand what you're saying.
Sure. Not all the blame falls on Israel, but some of the blame has to fall on the IDF for carrying out these extrajudicial killings on people for poking a fence. Could you imagine? Oh, actually, you know what? Ann Coulter, solved this for me today. I was going to say, could you imagine if the United States was just sniping Mexican immigrants trying to come over the border? But then Ann Coulter reminded me how sweet she is, and she said, why can't we do that? It just goes to show how compassionate these people really are.
Right. So, okay, hold on. That's a good point. Could you imagine if the United States was just sniping people on the Mexican border? Absolutely awful. Okay, but now add in
terrorism.
Add in a large terrorism faction that regularly shoots missiles into Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, and then add in that they are purposefully assembling on the border, burning tires, throwing grenades, throwing Molotov cocktails, taking pot shots back at the U.S. border. That's where the difficulty of the situation comes in, because there's no doubt of those 50 killed. I would venture to say the bulk of them you could probably prove were nefarious characters.
I would like to know how you're proving that, because as of now, the proof is, a sniper saw them do something and they took the shot. That's the proof. And I'm not willing to say that, either way, even if someone was trying to break down the fence, does that give you the right to shoot them in the head?
Yeah.
I mean,
in this
really?
instance, no, not on a regular day with one person trying to get over the fence, but on a day when there is mass demonstrations and people are throwing grenades and stuff. Some of them, yeah. Matt, you can't tell me all 50 of those people were not. Some of them weren't justified.
No, sure.
Right.
Some of them were justified.
All I'm saying is that there's a gray line. You're leaning left of that line. I'm leaning right of that line. But the problem is that the two sides that generally speak about this issue are far left and far right. Like
Sure.
Cassie Dillon goes, in responding to your point, she goes, anyone running towards that fence is a terrorist. And it's like, that's not true. But then you have like people on the left coming out and saying, it is war crimes that Israel has been continually perpetrating. This whole embassy move has no justification and blah 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 blah. So
Right.
So you can't get any people to go, okay, a little bit of truth on both sides, and then have the discussion that we're attempting at the
because
moment.
out of that 50, say it was 75%.
Sure.
Were terrorists. Isn't this the same problem we have with drone bombs and collateral damage?
Exactly. That was the point I was going to make. It's like.
Yes. Are you justified in killing that guy who's in ISIS? Yes. But are you going to blow up the entire bar that he's in and kill 30 other people?
Right.
That's hard. And also, why is the IDF using live ammunition? I mean, again, the article that I linked to that I'm talking about, this was a mentally ill woman, right? You're telling me rubber bullets don't do it? You're telling me tear gas? I mean, they had tear gas. So why are they just taking these random pop shots and just killing random people? I understand on one hand because, there are people that have committed knife attacks against Israelis and they've killed Israeli children.
Right.
That is totally fair, and you're allowed to say that Israel can defend itself, but we're playing a dangerous game where there's a crowd of people, we can just start shooting live ammunition into the crowd. I don't think that's justified at all. I think that's a little much. Maybe that makes me a bleeding heart liberal.
That makes you a terrorist sympathizer.
Right, I'm a terrorist sympathizer because I don't think we should be able to fire live ammo into crowds of people.
Dude, this is what we're talking about just now with the intellectual dark web. You're not allowed to hypothetically take yourself out of your stated and should have been position.
Right.
You're not allowed to hypothetically think like, hold on, is this actually what we should be doing? Or even is this what we should be doing to a certain extent? Like, because I don't know. Like you just said, why should they be firing live ammunition into crowds?
Because doesn't that also play into Hamas's hands? Doesn't having the headline in the New York Times, 52 Palestinians killed by Israelis, doesn't that help them? I don't know.
Yes, no. Well, yes, it does. But, I mean, then you have to factor in the Western media carrying water for Hamas, which they certainly do. They certainly do.
Yeah, I mean,
there is a large component of the American media that loves to find any fucking crazy little article out there that they can shit on Israel and prop up a Hamas, or a Palestinian, or not even a terrorist, just an Arab against an Israeli in a stated conflict.
True. And again,
there's no doubt that. But then there's also, right side of the media that will find any instance to prop up Israel over Hamas. That's the nuance in this.
Right.
And it's just.
The Israeli stooging,
Put it this
I
way,
was very surprised, honestly, on how much. I knew that obviously people are just like in their tribes, like you and I always talk about. I was a little surprised by how many people, at the mere mentioning that Israel may have done something unjustified, was, basically telling me this was an act of God and that it was absolutely necessary, or Israel would crumble under the force of 50 people on a fence. Right.
I mean, it was a lot more than 50.
It was a lot more than 50, but the general gist was there was this group of 60 people gathered at a portion of a fence.
Now, at least in my opinion, I find it easier to err on the side of Israel for a number of factors. I mean,
don't get me wrong, Israel. Because I'll praise Israel real quick in one sentence. In Israel, peaceful Arabs, Jews, Christians can all live together, completely fine. Gay people can live in Israel just fine. They are a democracy. They are a free market, basically, a capitalism. So, again, I want to visit Israel this fall. I think Israel is going to be a beautiful country, and I'll have a lot of fun. I just think it's a little scary that the military and the state will just start carrying these things out, and it's just pom-pom cheerleading from not just Israel, but from America. Right? These are millions of people in America cheerleading for another state. Basically, from what I gathered, these people care more about Israel than the United States. These evangelical Zionists care more about Israel than they care about the United States.
It comes off that way. I won't disagree.
It's insane.
I think, again, like just like nuance and teasing out the exact details
nuance,
of the situation is important.
You're right.
Context is important too.
True.
They are an extremely tall, small nation surrounded not only by Muslim nations, but by terrorist groups within these Muslim nations. I saw a map pointing out every terrorist group that we have designated in, either the top of Africa, across the Middle East, basically surrounding them. And I mean, if you're just imagine, Matt, imagine rockets just falling in cities. Imagine, constant fear of someone crossing the border from Mexico and just knifing people in your town. Like, they live under higher circumstances. Like, if those 50 people were shot on the Mexican border, there would be a lot of explaining to do. I think it gets a pass because, maybe next week a rocket will land in a school and kill 200 Jewish kids. Like, they get more leeway because it's not like they're the only ones perpetrating these acts. And that's not me defending them. That's just saying the situation is so heightened over there that it's able to be overlooked. But here's a quote for you. I think you'll like this one from Sam Harris. Israelis are distraught when Palestinian Arabs use human shields. Palestinian Arabs would love for the Israelis to use human shields. There is no moral comparison between the two.
What was that last part?
Israelis are distraught when Palestinian Arabs use human shields. I've heard this. Palestinian Arabs would love for Israelis to use human shields because then they could shoot both of them. There's no moral comparison between the two sides.
Right. Well, I mean, because you're talking about Hamas. Hamas is a terror organization.
Right. I'm not saying just the average person in Syria or any of these countries. I'm talking about
that's
Hamas, a terrorist group which is funded by Iran.
Should we go right into Iran?
I'd be fine with segueing. You got any other thoughts on the Palestinian conflict? The embassy's moved. We had every right to do it.
Yeah, they had every right to do it.
And people freaking out. Clinton, Bush, Obama have all made promises to do it and then never did it. So again, there's a little bit of hypocrisy now. I think it's just because Trump's doing it. It's just something to oppose. But it's going to calm down. In another year,
I think
this
it'll
won't
be.
matter.
No. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, now that it's done, there's no taking it back, really.
Right.
And I mean, we haven't even. There is a chance that if Donald Trump loses the election, that we could remove that embassy back to Tel Aviv. I was reading something interesting. That we haven't built the embassy yet. There, we're using an old U.S. consulate building. So Donald Trump is sort of keeping a campaign promise while at the same time kicking the can down the road. Just thought it was an interesting little piece on. I think it was on Foreign Policy Mag.
I hear what you're saying, but I think it's like.
No, he got the win. He got the win. He did it. I mean,
not only did he
kept.
I think
he kept his promise. Okay, fair enough.
It would be like when Obama got elected in 2009, right? Like, while he wanted to pull troops out of Iraq, he had to look strong so he didn't just get completely clobbered, and he had to bolster up in Afghanistan. Right. It's going to be one of those things. I don't think a Democrat getting elected in 2020, which they very well likely be, would. First day of business, we're going to pull that embassy. It would just cause too much stir for a non-issue. Right.
And, and I just hate that. Sorry, this is the last thing I'll say. I just hate that the idea of me defending innocent people protesting, right?
Some innocent
people. Because, it really is the stark. It's like Israel throws rocks and grenades. Palestinians throw rocks or Molotov cocktails and grenades. And the response is sweeping tank raids and rocket fire. So it's very much a stark difference, right? I'm not defending crazy. And so me defending innocent people being killed comes off as I hate Israel when that's not the case at all. I just wish we could be way more. I just believe we could be way more peaceful. And I think there's a way forward without this necessarily dehumanizing of each side.
You'd like to think that, Matt, but you have.
History's not on my side.
History is not on your side, and I mean, just a quick glance at that region, I think you're going to see. Well, you're going to see what you see in Iran with the mullahs and the Ayatollah Khomeini.
We'll see.
Chanting "Death to America, Death to Israel." So I don't think your hope for peace and calmness is really going to play out, but.
I just got woke as my second use of the word woke on this podcast. I have one more.
Yeah, you get
listen to Scott Horton.
I just finished his book. You want it?
Yeah, I do. And I listened to Fool's Errand on the war in Afghanistan.
Very good
Scott
book.
Horn, great, anti-war contributor, Libertarian Institute guy. I was listening to his podcast with Dave Smith. He had on today. I was listening at the gym because that's what good nerds do. Is they don't listen to music while they work out. They listen to foreign policy podcasts. And holy shit, is that guy smart? I mean, that guy just remembers everything. I mean, I thought, obviously I don't know as much as Scott Horn, but even on some of the things I thought I was pretty well versed in, Afghanistan, the Mujahideen, and the Iraq War too.
No, it's mind-bending listening.
He was pulling out names and, names of articles that I double-checked him twice. And he was completely right. He just got the name of the article completely right and pulled out quotes.
No, I didn't even bother. I fact-checked maybe the first 10 things he cited in that book, and then I gave up because
dude, he's just a wicked smart guy. I really highly
seeing him
suggest
debate someone who's more
I would
hawkish, pro-war. Oh, it would be very bad
to see him debate Shapiro and Israel. I would love it, and Iran, because I like Shapiro, but Shapiro's nonsense about Iran in the past week and a half has been ridiculous.
I gotta be honest, I haven't listened to him about 2 weeks now.
Because this is the thing. The framing.
But here's where we're going to clash heads again with the Iran deal here.
The framing of the Iran deal to people on the far right is Iran wants a nuclear bomb, and as soon as they get it, they're going to blow up Israel. Right. That's where he's coming. That's where he's coming from. That's the starting base. And so whatever we can do. I mean, I heard Shapiro on his podcast say.
No, you're right. And once you start with that, you can't really have a logical.
He said
they no doubt want it, and they're no doubt trying to get it. But the second that they have it, they're not going to blow Israel off the map.
You should listen to Scott Horton. You think that, But Shapiro will say, "Why should we get out of the Iran deal?" I remember he listed his reasons for getting out of the Iran deal, and it was, it's impossible to trust them on any deal. Okay, so we can't make deals with them, and then eventually it was, and let Israel do what Israel needs to do. If Israel needs to go blow up a nuclear reactor, then Israel will drop bombs on Iran. Oh, Israel just fucking drop bombs on Iran. That won't turn south, right? That's not going to destroy the Middle East even further. Are you kidding
right
me?
After it pulled out, they had basically their largest attack in Syria on Iran in many years.
Yeah, they attacked. Well, this is
every known position
what Israel is
Iran
saying
in Syria they did.
What is Iran saying? Or no. Israel struck first, and they struck Iranian targets in Syria. Iran responded by firing missiles into the Golan Heights, which were intercepted by Israel, and nothing got through.
They knocked it down.
I'm going to talk about the Golan Heights in my video I've been promising on Israeli-Iranian relations, so we're not going to talk about that. Let's talk about the Iran deal.
Hold on, going to what you just said there.
Sure.
The problem with Shapiro's position is just as he would point out, you can't have a logical debate with a social justice warrior because the premises they're coming from are either illogical or not, based
non-starters.
They're
non-starters.
They're non-starters. Like what you just said there, he'll let Israel will take them out. It's okay, so we're going to let Israel basically start a war that we're inevitably going to have to get in on. It's we're just going to outsource our foreign policy to Israel, which is something I'm not in favor of.
That's what. And
as much as I am a supporter of Israel, that nation also has to stand on its own feet, make decisions, and suffer the repercussions of those decisions.
Which is also creepy because
our Iran deal policy can't just be pull the deal
because
Israel blow them up if you want to. If you do, we got your back. Because no, I don't want that to happen.
So let's go. You tell me, because you have written here that you are glad we pulled out of the Iran deal.
Yeah.
Why are you glad that we pulled out of the Iran deal?
Because I don't think it served the purpose. Okay, here's the deal. If the Iran deal were doing the job of the Iran deal as it was sold, we stayed not.
I'm sorry, repeat that. Okay, I just didn't pick up that last 5 seconds.
Okay, if the deal was currently doing what it was pitched as by Obama and his cheerleaders, Ben Rhodes, back in 2015.
Literary fiction professor, right?
Yeah.
Ben Rhodes.
Right. If it was doing what it was sold as, and it was still being upheld and working in that fashion, then I would be in favor of the deal. However, what it was pitched as and what people continue to claim that it is and what it is doing in effect in actuality, I think are completely different things.
Okay.
So so I mean, proponents of it will say like, oh, this is preventing them from ever getting a nuclear weapon. And it's like, in my opinion, this is basically just like putting a 10-year, break where we pump a bunch of money into them. Their economy is going to grow. I mean, we're seeing it now. They're having more influence in the region than ever before. For a deal that's supposed to stop nuclear proliferation, it's arguably causing both the militarization of anti-Iran countries in the region. Like, you're seeing a coalition of anti-Iran countries form, whether it's Israel and Egypt and Saudi Arabia. And then once that sunset clause ends and the deal basically expires, they now have the money and they've had the time to jump right back in and kickstart their nuclear program. See, I'm not, and I agree with you when you say that Benjamin Netanyahu for the last 25 years has been saying they're 1 year away from getting a nuke.
I wasn't even going to say that. I was going to say.
Well, you said that before, and I agree.
I've said that before. Yeah, I've said that before.
Benjamin Netanyahu. It's that problem between the left-right paradigm. Like, there is something in the middle. I can say I'm against the deal, but also say they're not 1 year away from getting a nuke.
Or that they're just going to like blow up Israel,
or that they're immediately going to get it and blow up Israel. Because in all likelihood, they want a nuke for the same reason that everyone wants a nuke. Because once you have a nuke, we can't just march in there and push you off the top.
Yeah, exactly. That's why North Korea wants a nuke. I just want to push back on one point you made there, and it's that the sunset clause, right? The idea that in 10 years it ends. Do you think any sovereign country would ever sign a deal that there was no end to? That there was just, you don't have a nuke forever. Sign here. Because the Americans, what we got out of the deal
so what are we going to do in 9 years? When it's a year away, are we going to renegotiate for another 10? Are we going to offer more cash so that they stay calm?
We didn't offer them any cash. What are you talking about?
We unfreezed assets. We basically offered them
So we gave them money that we froze. So it was their money. And I'm not, again, they'll put it towards whatever they want, but it's not. But I mean, I don't think we should frame the argument that the United States is taking this out of the tax-paying coffers and just giving billions to Iran, because that's not what happened.
I mean, taxpayer dollars do end up in Iran, but that's just a spending problem in Washington. Yes, the money, the $150 billion, the pallets of cash that you hear were given back was largely just unfrozen assets that we, entrapped with sanctions.
What did America give up for the Iran deal? Because what America essentially did was release sanctions and give them cash, their own frozen assets.
We
didn't really give up anything. What did we give up?
No. I mean, we gave up. Yeah, I mean, no, here's the thing. It's just that it's people will say like, oh, they're complying with the deal, like we're now the ones breaking the deal. And it's like, yeah, they're complying with the deal because what they had to agree to wasn't super stringent. Like, there isn't deep daily.
It was kind of.
Matt, do we really know the inner workings of all the military sites going on in Iran?
Dude, like, we checked them, and we have IAEA scientists working hand in hand with Iranian scientists on their nuclear energy program. They filled their largest heavy water reactor at Iraq with cement. And there's a thing. I mean, again, with the whole, we're treating Iran different. Would any government allow anyone to just check every single military site with no question? Really? Would anyone ever say, okay, and part of the deal is
no deal.
anytime we want to walk in and check all of your military facilities, you have to just let us in. No one's going to sign to that. That's insane.
Well, I think we just have to strike a harder bargain here, because I don't see. The fundamental problem really is that the regime, you can't trust, and two, they're not moderate. Again, what we were sold on. We said, guys, guess what? By the way, Obama, all his cheerleaders over at Pod Save America now. Guess what? You'll never believe it. We found these moderates. They're great. These new moderates, boom, out of nowhere over in Iran. And
dude, there are moderates in Iran.
Dude, yeah, but they're not the ones in power.
True, you're right. The mullahs are not moderate.
They're not the ones in power. Dude, no, here's the thing. Iran is an extremely young nation. They have I don't know what the percentage is and the number of people, but like a large percentage are under 30. And they do not like the mullahs. They don't like the restraint. They want to wear Levi's. They want to be westernized. And I believe that. And I think it's true.
I believe that as well, and I think
It's
that's
just
evident from the
those are the
protests.
moderates, and those are the people.
So let me ask you this: do we win over the moderates by strangleholding their economy? And because now we're giving the mullahs, fire and saying, we agree with our side of the bargain. America, no matter what we do, will never like us. They will never let us into the international community. We have to oppose death to America. Everyone's like, well, kinda. I mean, again, and this is what I hate because the mullahs are awful. They fund terrorism in the Quds forces and the IRGC. We did put ourselves maybe in a bad position.
Because here's the thing, like, again, this was sold as they're going to take all the lessening of sanctions and the return of the money, and it's going to boost their economy, and they're going to get back in the game, and they're going to be moderate, you know what I mean? And they're not going to worry about a nuke, and it's going to help out the people. Yeah. The people are really going to prosper. Because, like I said, all those people wearing Levi's, they just want more money in their pocket. They want to be able to buy an iPhone. They want, a new pair of Levi's, and what happened? I mean, the economy really isn't improving in Iran despite the releasing of sanctions and the money that they gave back. John Kerry admitted at the time some money will inevitably go to terror, and what we're seeing is a lot of money's going to terror. Hezbollah, which is throwing those rockets into Israel, more on the prowl than ever before. Iran has more influence in that region than ever before. They're fully engaged in Syria.
Isn't that our fault, though? Isn't that partly our fault, though?
You could argue it's partly our fault for destabilizing the whole thing 15 years ago, but tomato.
More than that, when we started supporting Saddam Hussein in the Iran-Iraq War, and we gave him weapons to slaughter Iranian children. The Iran-Iraq War.
As Dave Smith says in the intro to his podcast, we should never fund another young rebel group in that region again.
No, we shouldn't. Exactly.
I don't disagree with you. We gotta go from where we currently are.
And this is not me being super smart. This is me using the Scott Horton podcast that I was literally just listening to.
That's all we do is just regurgitate a bunch of different sources. But hey,
partly.
There's some independent thought. Go ahead.
In the great Shia-Sunni divide, we took the side of the fucking extremist terrorists, dude. Who's a greater sponsor of terrorism? Iran, who sponsors terrorism, and Hezbollah, the Quds forces, the IRGC, right? Or they talk about, the bombing of the Marine barracks in Lebanon when America was in Lebanon. Is it the 80s or maybe early 2000s?
Yeah, it was in the 80s.
So, them. Or, and wait for this one, Saudi Arabia, who 9 of the 11 9/11 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia gives money to Wahhabist preachers to open up Wahhab schools all across the world. They're the ones funding this extremist ideology. We decide to support the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, creating Al-Qaeda, right? Eventually, those offshoot people create Al-Qaeda, who eventually we fight in the Iraq War, who eventually we end up arming in Syria, and they become ISIS. Obama did this, George W. Bush did this. So who's the state sponsor of terror here? I think it depends a lot on what you define by terrorism, and I don't think that's a relativist argument at all, considering that, at least the Iranian terrorists aren't going around chopping off American journalists' heads. Is that fair to say?
No, it's entirely fair to say because it's factual. And the problem is we're not really dealing in fact anymore. We're dealing with entrenched sides like we've been having this whole theme all day. Like, you are 100% correct. While at the moment Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism, historically that has been Saudi Arabia's role. And yet now, but it's almost like now we're seeing
neither of them are good guys, and it sucks.
That's the thing.
This sucks. No one is a good guy over there. We need to get away. We need to get away.
Like, we don't realize, we take this naive position, like we're constantly looking for the black and white, the good guy, bad guy, whereas the people over there have so much, alliances and connections that when we pick one side in one conflict, down the road, they're going to be against us in another one. Like, there's no true allies in that region save Israel.
Right. It gets really hairy.
Really, what other?
I would like to say the Kurds.
Can you fundamentally right? But they're not a state.
They're not a state, and
absolutely murdered that we continue to leave in the dust.
Yeah, what we've done
that is the one
to the
group.
Kurds is
the one that we should feel some remorse over leaving behind.
And you know what it's all from? It's all because Turkey considers them terrorists. Because
Right.
as nuanced as this is, there have been people in the PKK. I think that's the terrorist organization in Turkey. They're considered terrorists. They've killed innocent people. And the Peshmerga is the fighting force in Iraq, I believe.
Right.
Is the Peshmerga. But the PKK is like the organization that Turkey banned because they're Kurdish terrorists. So this whole thing is complex. This whole thing requires tons of nuance, tons of reading, that no one's willing to do because let's loop this to the front. Because you only get 30 seconds to make your point on cable news television, and the only people willing to have these conversations in long form are the podcast people, are the Joe Rogans, are the Scott Hortons.
I mean, you're not going to be able to get on, Tucker Carlson tonight and tell me, and he goes, okay, what do you think about the Iran deal? And you just go, well, 30 years ago back in Iran, we backed this group, and then this, and you can't give a full, complete history to get an accurate picture of where we are today. And even if you understand the full, complete history to have an accurate position of where we are today, it's like, what do you do? What really can you do? Because just like every other time we've tried something, it's backfired, or the group we funded here to help us with this eventually used the guns that we gave them on our own allies in another region. Like, it's
crazy.
It's a constant mess, and I'm coming to the point every day.
Get out.
But then this is
Ron Paul, just get out.
This is when the Israel people get on your case. What are you going to leave Israel? You're going to leave Israel in the desert by themselves?
By themselves, they're doing a pretty damn good job. I mean, Israel just bombed Syria, and what happened?
That's
Syria tried to bomb them back. Yeah, Israel has been bombing Syria all throughout the Civil War with pretty much impunity. I mean, let's be honest. Is Syria going to overthrow Israel? If Iran launched a war, do you think they would beat Israel? No fucking way. Israel's army is stronger than all of those armies put together, as they have proven continuously in 1967 and 1973, when they defeated Egypt, when they defeated Syria, when they defeated
The only thing is, Israel has said it before. We will never allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon, and you
can't blame them.
You can't blame them.
I mean, you see the thing on TV.
I back that.
You don't want
conventional war. They beat them every time. And that's why it'll never. I don't think it'll break out again, because just like every time it's been tried in history, Israel wins within a week and they gobble up some more land. But
yeah, and I don't believe Israel and Iran have ever fought directly.
Not directly, but I mean it's all proxy. But I think it's interesting to see the backfire, the backlash of Obama's foreign policy. I mean, Obama set out essentially to turn a dime on what we had been doing and instead play to Iran and bolster them in the region, and they were bolstered. And because of that, you're seeing a backlash, and now you're seeing countries going, okay, we got the Jews, the Jews, we don't really like them, but we got Iran. I think I'm going to go shake the Yuden's hand. You know what I mean? Like, and you're seeing Egypt, Saudi Arabia going, all right, they're not that bad, and they're making economic alliances and military alliances with Israel to protect themselves from Iran. So
yeah, Egypt's sort of been friends with Israel since they gave back the Sinai Peninsula after 1973 war
with Arafat. But
yeah,
I mean, at least in terms of the Iran deal, let's go more on Barack Obama's foreign policy, because Barack Obama's foreign policy, he won the Nobel Peace Prize before he got in. He's supposed to be the big arbiter of peace, and what happened was he doubled down on these wars. And he started a few wars of his own. Libya. He started drone striking everywhere. He escalated that program.
And I want to mention someone very important to the drone strike program, in a second. But look at Libya. Why does no one blame Obama besides the right on Libya? I just shared an article
Libya
today.
Doesn't even get mentioned anymore.
Libya is a terrorist hotbed.
It is a failed state. There's a slave trade going on there.
There is a slave trade going on in Libya, and due to Libya falling and being a hotbed for these terrorists, it's spread all throughout Africa. Now there's Islamists all over. I mean, Boko Haram was a small movement. I mean, now you have people in Mali and Burkina Faso, in Niger. Why are we in Niger? Because Islamist terrorists went down there from fucking Libya when we overthrew their government.
and we stopped following the Constitution long ago. We don't have to have Congress authorize military force. We just decide to go there now.
Right.
That's
And
another issue.
That's another issue. Let's go to the last thing I think we should talk about is Gina Haspel and John McCain.
Sure.
Because I think it's an interesting dynamic. You can take over. I've been yelling a lot lately.
So Gina Haspel confirmed as the she got confirmed.
Yep.
Confirmed as the CIA director last week. There was hearings on that. To boil it down quickly, she's the current acting director. We just nabbed 5 terrorists, some high-ranking officials from ISIS, captured them alive. The CIA is continuing their policies, enhanced interrogations. They're continuing what they've always done. They're running black ops in all these countries. They're getting into things that we know needs to happen, but we don't like to know are ongoing. They're the ones that get their hands dirty. And years ago, Gina Haspel certainly got her hands dirty. She oversaw a number of black sites. She oversaw the use of enhanced interrogations, torture, and she then happened to sign off on some deletion of evidence and videos and things along those lines. Right. And because of this, many are saying that she's unfit. And personal opinion, in a perfect world, she is. However, the nuance that I'd like to throw into that is during her hearings, they asked if she – well, first off, they asked her if it was moral. And Kamala Harris, God, she gets under my skin. The hypocrisy when so many of those Congress people were getting briefed on a daily basis while these programs were going on, and they didn't say dick. They had nothing to say about it, right? Mm-hmm. But mum's the word. Yeah, keep going on. Dump the water on their faces. We love it. But now, 15 years later, when they're questioning someone who was doing that for them, and at the time they would sell it as keeping America safe, they love to question the morality of that person right in front of their face. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. But aside from that, yeah, in a perfect world, you'd like to maybe get a clean face in there. But Gina Haspel is eminently qualified. She's extremely liked by the department, by the CIA. Couldn't be more highly recommended. And as she said in her hearings, she, 1, agreed that it was immoral. 2, said that she would never do it again, even asked. And 3, she said, I was following existing law, which again is a shitty defense. It's sort of like the Nuremberg defense. Like, I was just following orders, but there was laws in place. They followed them, and they did what they had to do at the time. They did what they thought they had to do at the time. And so this caused quite a stir in terms of her nomination process. Eventually, getting to John McCain here, it was clear that she was going to get confirmed. You had Joe Manchin from West Virginia, who's got a re-election coming up, Republican state. He's a Democrat. It's got to make some overtures. He signed off on her. And it was clear that she was going to pass. And John McCain, who's extremely ill right now with brain cancer, said he's a no vote and he doesn't support it. There's obviously some history with Trump and McCain, going back to Trump saying that he likes war heroes that weren't captured on the campaign trail. Absolutely despicable comment. Pretty disgusting.
Yeah, I don't know how you claim to be a supporter of the troops when you say something like that.
Right. But one of his aides in the White House last week in a closed-door meeting, in response to hearing that McCain was not going to support Gina Haspel, said, "It doesn't matter. He's dying anyway." Now, apparently this was supposed to be a joke for the people in the room, but like everything else in the Trump administration, this has leaked.
Yeah.
Right. Bad comment. Pretty distasteful.
Pretty bad. Yeah, pretty distasteful comment.
Pretty bad. Like, you can disagree with the man's politics, which I do extensively. However, there's no doubt that he's served this country for a very long time. And when the man is, however old he is, 84, 5, dying of brain cancer, you don't pile on.
Yeah, maybe this just goes into dehumanizing the other side.
Dehumanizing the other side.
Where it's like, I really wish, exactly what I was about to say is, McCain's supported some wars, done some stuff that I don't agree with. I don't think though, I've never attributed that John McCain was doing these things out of malice.
Right.
I really wish, and apparently it's never existed, but I do like the idea that I wish at the end of the day we're all Americans and we don't make fun of people or kick them while they're literally about to go into the ground.
I think that ship sailed a long time ago.
No, it did.
I don't.
It did sail a long time ago. I'm just saying what I wish we were striving for. I wish we were above that. We're not above that. Whatever. I called Saudi Arabia a bunch of terrorists earlier. So clearly I'm not above shit like that. But no, but I thought the John McCain thing was a little much. And
But just something
Gina
that I was
Haspel.
thinking about it.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
With Gina Haspel, there's nothing I love more in my government officials than deleting evidence. That's why I voted for Hillary. That's why I would have voted for Gina Haspel. It's if you're deleting government documents, then you have my vote.
Right.
So that part, fuck her. Was it legal at the time? Was it different circumstances? All right, I'll give it to you. She's obviously qualified. Whatever. I do want to say that on the flip side, the Democrat hypocrisy is hilarious because I saw John Brennan making some tweets. John Brennan saying, "How could we ever let someone so immoral stand in the halls of the CIA? I would never." John Brennan, a true statesman. Meanwhile, John Brennan was overlooking the Obama drone program that was killing
John Brennan was also higher up than her during the same time that these enhanced interrogations were ongoing.
Exactly. He was like in the room when they're fucking writing the laws while Gina Haspel's following him.
In fact, they intended to nominate John Brennan for his position at CIA long before he actually got in, but they had to make him an Obama staffer because it was too close between actual torture and him being appointed to that position. Wow. They're like, we got to let this cool over a little bit more before we stick him in there.
And again, torturing some ISIS
really knows no Browns.
Torturing some Al Qaeda people, to me, isn't as bad as just dropping a bomb on a hospital and saying, "Hey, I think there's 3 ISIS guys in there. We should just level the whole fucking floor."
Yeah,
exactly. So the moral preening was a little much and made me gag a little bit. It's like, Democrats, but don't pretend you're the fucking party of peace and love. You're not. Right. You guys are warmongers just like the rest of them.
Sure, the only thing they agree on is killing foreigners and spending money.
Yeah, killing foreigners and spending our money doing it.
Spending our money. See, no, they disagree in how we get it. Some don't like to tax, some do, but they both like to spend it. But just one more thing on the Kelly Sadler thing.
Yeah.
Like you just said, and we have pointed out the hypocrisy and obviously John Brennan and anyone that was any Obama people that are then now poo-pooing Gina Haspel have no grounds to do that.
Yeah, no.
But in reference to the comments made about John McCain, I mean, obviously what Kelly Sadler said was awful and wrong. I mean, in a more bigger picture, the president of the United States on the campaign trail said that someone who was in a prisoner of war camp for over 5 years, who was permanently maimed from it, and who numerous times stayed longer than necessary so that others could escape or others could be released. Someone who actually was a true hero in every definition of the sense. I don't like my hero. I like my heroes, the ones that aren't captured. An absolutely awful comment that history will judge him for. But it's just that the media, when they then go to hit him over the head for this, and for Kelly Sadler's comment, also have not a single leg to stand on.
Why is that?
And, I mean, especially with McCain. I mean, I saw so many people coming out saying like, "Oh, John McCain, such a good, honorable man." It's like, do you really want me to dig deep and pull up what you were saying about him in 2008? All the lies and the misinformation and the dragging him through the mud just so you can get your man elected. And people know that. And not only that, it's just that in any other presidency or any other time, this would cause such a stir. Imagine if an Obama staffer said that or a Bush staffer said that. They would probably get fired. It would be a bigger deal than it is because it's so baked in. You hear that comment and you're either fake news, make America great again, McCain's no good for this country.
Yeah.
Or you go, that's pretty disgraceful, but the media blows too, and they're probably blown out of proportion. And or you're just center left of the aisle, and they're like, she should probably be fired. There's really no comment from Trump, And then you get even farther left, and it's like Jim Acosta doing hard hitting reporting. We need McCain's a great man, but 8 years ago you hated him. So
yeah,
again, it's just the hypocrisy's all over the place, and I don't think that's really going to change.
The hate from McCain from the right is strange because they call him a treasonous traitor, and they think he's like the biggest disgrace ever because Trump doesn't like him. I mean, that's what it is. They just follow their icon, which is the lowest form of thought ever. Just believing this guy, this reality TV star. Sorry,
Blind belief.
we don't have to. Yeah, we don't have to go down that road because that'll be a 20-minute diatribe of me saying if you believe everything Trump says, then you're worse than the Democrats. All right, I think that's the end of the podcast.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think we covered what we need to.
A lot more than we thought. I mean, I thought there was going to be a 45-minute podcast. You guys snuck out with an extra 25.
There we go.
So this is the OR Podcast. Thanks for listening. Remember to rate, comment, subscribe, share, tweet. Tell your friend, hey, these two guys like to talk shit about foreign policy and news and culture every week. You should check it out. Again, you can follow us at The Ombudsman Report. You can follow me at Planet Politico. You can follow Bobby over at Bobby J Politics. TheOmbudsmanReport.com, iTunes, Google. Thanks for watching, guys.
Have a good week.